Well, today is the first Sunday of Advent. As most of you probably know, Advent comprises the 4 Sundays leading up to Christmas. It is a time of preparation, not only for the celebration of Jesus' first coming, but it's also a time to remember that Jesus Christ is coming again. Now, here on the first Sunday of Advent, I want to ask a very difficult and painful question. And some of you might be thinking when you hear me ask this question, Claude, that does not sound very Christmassy. But I would like to suggest that the question I'm going to look at today is exactly what Christmas is all about. Let's bow our heads. And I invite you to take a moment and pray silently that God would speak to you at this time. God, open our hearts like never before. Help us by your Holy Spirit to experience your presence like never before. Speak to us now. Amen. August the 25th, Hurricane Harvey slams into the coast of Texas, dumping 50 inches of rain, causing devastating floods. 30,000 people are left homeless. 91 people die, including a family with young children trying to escape in a minivan. September the 10th, Hurricane Irma slams into the coast of Florida. It's a Category 5 hurricane, which means that it has sustained winds of 185 miles per hour. 7 million people are told to evacuate. That's the largest evacuation in U.S. history. 82 people die, including 14 elderly residents of a nursing home who die in the heat because of the power outage. September 19th, a 7.1 magnitude earthquake hits Mexico City, killing 286 people. September 20th, Hurricane Maria slams into the island of Puerto Rico, knocking out power to the entire island. Forests and crops are destroyed. In some towns, 80 to 90% of man-made structures are destroyed. Much of the island's population can no longer access clean water because of the lack of power. As many as 500 people have died, either because of the storm or because of the power outages, including an old man who lit an oil lantern for light in the lack of power. He fell asleep, the oil lantern turned over, burned the house down with him in it. Including an old lady who died without her breathing machine, including a funeral home director who died of a heart attack because of the stress of burying so many people, and including patients in the 36 hospitals in Puerto Rico that still today do not have power. November 12th, a 7.3 magnitude earthquake hits the border region between Iraq and Iran. More than 450 people are killed. And then, of course, throughout all of this, during the fall, we've had wildfires raging through our western states, destroying forests, destroying homes, killing trees, killing wild animals, killing crops, livestock, killing dozens of people. And on top of all this, many of you are suffering. Illness, injury, chronic pain, depression, loneliness, loss of a loved one, failure of a relationship. Many of you are suffering. And so here's the question. Where is God? Where is God in all of this? Does God not care? Is God not able to stop these things? Where is God? Did you know the Bible asks the very same question? Psalm 42 is a great example. The psalmist says, "My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When can I go and meet with God? My tears have been my food." Some of you know what that feels like. My tears have been my food day and night, while people say to me all day long, "Where is your God?" My soul is downcast within me. I say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me? Why must I go about mourning, oppressed by the enemy? My bones suffer mortal agony as my foes taunt me, saying to me all day long, where is your God? That question is asked over and over and over in the Psalms. And then you look at the rest of the Bible and you find that some of your favorite Bible heroes questioned God. Moses, why have you brought trouble on this people? You have not rescued your people at all. Jeremiah, why do you let the wicked prosper? You deceived me, Lord. Cursed be the day I was born. Job, I cry out to you, but you do not answer. Does it please you to oppress me? And of course, Jesus himself cried out on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? Where is God? That's the question. The answer is found in Matthew chapter 1. Matthew 1, beginning in verse 18. Now the birth of Jesus the Messiah took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been engaged to Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. Her husband Joseph, being a righteous man and unwilling to expose her to public disgrace, planned to dismiss her quietly. But just when he had resolved to do this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. All this took place to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet. Look, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall name him Emmanuel, which means God is with us. They shall name him Emmanuel, which means God is with us. The answer to the question, where is God, is found in what we celebrate this time of year. Because listen, Christmas is not just about the birth of a good person. Christmas is not just about the birth of a noble man. Christmas is about an incarnation. Incarnation, that's a word that means in flesh. Because the Christian belief is that in Jesus Christ, God literally took on flesh and became one of us. The Gospel of John says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. Where is God? God is with us in the person of Jesus Christ, living with us, suffering with us, enduring pain with us, facing grief and loneliness and depression and betrayal with us, experiencing death with us. Where is God? God is with us. Some years ago, somebody wrote an imaginative story about the end of time. This person pictured the people of earth all gathered on a great plain, gathered before the throne of God, waiting to be judged by God. And all of a sudden, somebody says, wait a minute, who is God to judge us? God leads a sheltered life. God lives in heaven, where there is no suffering and pain. God doesn't know what we've been through. And the crowd says, yeah, there's a murmur of agreement. And a Jewish woman steps up and she pulls back her sleeve to reveal a tattoo from a concentration camp. And then a black man pulls down the collar of his shirt to show the rope burns from when he was lynched. A young man in a uniform steps forward and opens his shirt to show the holes from the bullets that killed him. And one by one, people show the scars and the pain of the suffering that they had to go through. And they all agree, before God can judge us, God should have to go through what we've been through. And so they decide on a sentence that God should have to serve. One person says, make him be born poor. And everybody says, yeah. And then somebody else steps up and says, not just poor. Make him be born poor and part of an oppressed people who've been invaded by a more powerful country and are constantly being stamped down. And everybody said, yes. Somebody else said, and make him be born in such a way that people question the circumstances of his birth and don't believe that he has a father. And then other people stepped up and said, make his friends and family turn their back on him. And somebody else said, yes, and make him suffer pain. Pain like we've suffered. But make it the worst pain ever. Put him in the hands of some of the worst torturers that the world has ever known. And somebody else said, humiliate him. Rip off his clothes. Parade him before people and let them spit on him and laugh at him and jeer at him. And finally, someone says, make him die a painful, agonizing death. A murmur of agreement goes through the crowd as everyone says, yes, that's what God should have to serve. That's the sentence God should have to experience. But then all of a sudden, everybody gets quiet. And they look at one another. Nobody speaks. Nobody moves. They all drop their heads as they realize God has already served his sentence. God has already suffered all those things in the person of Jesus Christ. Where is God? God is with us, living with us, suffering with us, enduring pain with us, experiencing death with us. Stan Jones was the provost of a Christian college in Illinois. He had to step down because he is struggling with Parkinson's disease. Now, as a Christian professor, Christian university provost, he's done a lot of thinking about what we call the problem of evil. The problem of evil is a philosophical conundrum. Why does a loving, all-powerful God allow people to suffer? Why does a loving God allow people to suffer? Is it because God is not all-powerful and cannot stop it? Or is it because God is not loving and does not care? Why does God allow suffering? For atheists, this puzzle leads to them not believing. For Christians, this puzzle leads to difficult moments of not knowing what to say. Stan Jones did a lot of thinking about the problem of evil. Why does God allow suffering? And he finally came to realize that most of the attempts to answer that question are really attempts to get God off the hook. There is suffering and evil. Evil exists, suffering exists, and apparently God lets it happen, and that makes God look bad. So let's answer that question. Let's solve this problem. Let's solve this puzzle so we can get God off the hook. And here's what Stan Jones said about that. He said, God doesn't seem to be interested in getting off the hook. In fact, the answer of God in Jesus Christ to the problem of suffering is not to get off the hook at all, but rather to impale himself on the hook of human suffering. Where is God? God is with us. Think about how Jesus asked us to remember him. He didn't say, okay, y'all, I want you to go out and have a big picnic. Go out on a bright sunny day, sit on a grassy knoll, and pass around bread and fish, and remember that time I fed 5,000 people. How did Jesus ask us to remember Him? He didn't say, okay, here's what I want you to do. Have a big fish fry. Big fish fry. Cook lots of fish. And remember that time that miraculously, that I filled Peter's nets with fish. How did Jesus ask us to remember Him? He didn't say, okay, here's what I want you to do. Have a big barbecue. Because, you're Christians now, so the kosher laws don't apply to you. Have a big barbecue. And remember the time that I drove all those pigs into the sea. How did Jesus ask us to remember Him? He didn't say, drink a toast. And remember the time I turned water into wine. How did Jesus ask us to remember Him? This is my body broken for you. This is my blood poured out. For you. When Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me, He wasn't talking about the happy moments, the fun moments, the moments you put on Facebook. When Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me, He was talking about His suffering. Jesus wanted us to remember Him by His suffering. Where is God? God is with us. In the person of Jesus Christ, God has come into our suffering, entered into it, taken it upon Himself on the cross, and assured us through His resurrection that one day He will defeat evil in every form. In the middle of a hurting and dying world, this is our source of hope. Where is God? God is with us.